right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the 13th Fleet After Action Report. I am your host, Chris. I am very glad that you guys are joining me tonight. We've got a really great show. We are coming off of the Miso Store Championship in Louisville, Kentucky. So we're going to be talking some Armada today, and I've got some friends to join me on talking Armada. We have Admiral Tater, otherwise known as Garrett Vance. Thanks for joining me. We have the tournament champion, Reuben Fleming. So,
what's up, everybody?
Welcome. And then we have our SSD Admiral, Nick Federico. So, thank you guys for joining me tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Let's just go ahead and jump right in and just get your initial thoughts about what you saw at the tournament on Saturday.
Brick Fleet to Worlds.
Yeah, so Reuben, congratulations, Reuben. He got his Worlds ticket there, handedly. 3 huge wins in a row. So,
two of which you can actually see on YouTube, because we do have video evidence that he didn't actually cheat. He did beat down people.
Yeah, fair and square. And blew stuff up, like decimated people's fleets.
Shooting people, scooping up rocks.
There was
clinking squadrons, the whole thing.
There was one question that came up from somebody who had watched the YouTube videos, and they were asking if your opponent in the second round actually read the objective card.
Everything except for the last and most important
line.
Yeah, that was a huge error.
Yeah, that threw me for a really weird loop, because I've never, I've played a lot of high bid farming fleets, and I've never had a player actually just go, no, I'm not going to engage you, and just fly away. Everybody talks about it online. It's like, oh, don't play these things because it could happen to you, and then you're just stuck in 6-5 purgatory. It's never happened to me. And when that deployment happened, I was like, are we doing this? Is this for real?
Well,
is this what's happening?
So everybody, it's volatile deposits, and you mine off asteroids at the end of the turn, victory tokens. Yeah. And the opponent gave Reuben all 3 asteroids.
Gave me all the rocks. Put the dust cloud in the middle of this, so 2 of the rocks were here, and then the other rock was up here, and then you put the dust cloud here, and I put the debris fields on his corners, and then he just deployed on the totally opposite corner of the board from me. I went, you're never going to get to me in time. What?
Yeah.
So I just moved around the rocks and came in like this, because I've drilled this fleet corner deploying and moving it so much that it was all pretty natural, and just hoovered up a whole bunch of points. I got 14 victory tokens that game out of a possible 18, right, Nick?
Yeah, I do.
14 out of 18, yep.
I do recall when I was editing the video seeing a lot of victory tokens sitting by the counter
It was disgusting. Yeah.
How much was each of those victory tokens worth?
15.
Wow.
They're 15 each. I think for volatile, I don't know. I hate to say they should be 10, because in most games you don't have that kind of swing. But 15 points for a potential 18 tokens is a lot.
And the worst part is a 2-ship fleet like that, where it's Interjector and ISD. If he goes nose to nose with my fleet, I'm getting a 10.
Right.
You're dead. Yep. You can't get out. I'm blasting you.
Yeah. The whole engagement thing, like you said, like you see it online. I've been running the Super for like 3 months now. And that's the kind of the thing you always hear with the Super too, where it's like, if they don't want to engage with you, you don't have a choice. Like, you just can't catch them. And that's like always the fear. But like, kind of like you said, I have never had a player deploy against, like, opposite corner, like, I'm just not going to engage with you in all the games we played. So I don't know. I think that option exists, and maybe you'll see it like at high level play where people really are just preserving tournament points. But
yeah, it's a strategy in a 4-round tournament where you can't lose that game. You take your 5 points to mathematically stay in the game.
Yeah. But then, so like, what do you do in next game, right? So if you play a fleet like this and you take that 5 without the engagement, you need to maintain that 8-point average, right? So in the next game, you've got to get like a 9 to really make up the difference that you lost there.
Or an 8, yeah.
Or
an
an
8
8.
can get you there. But now, his list isn't present, Reuben. Did he have... You said he couldn't go nose to nose to you. Did he not have like targeting scramblers and his interdictor teched out?
I mean, sure, but I mean, I'm not scared
to stop things.
It's an interdictor. It goes speed 2. It
right. Well,
moves
it can really beef that ISD up as far as like survivability goes. But
yeah, but an ISD, I mean, even with all the tools and tricks, an ISD is not going to bring down a Starhawk fast enough.
Right, especially if he didn't have. Did he have a big fighter screen at all?
He had some fighters, but the biggest thing is that I played against 2-ship twice. So my games 2 and 3 were against 2-ship. And for people who are not aware, 2-ship is 2 activations, right? So it's an Imperial idea that's been floated around since like Thrawn 2-ship, like 2018,
2017, basically.
It totally went away. And there were a couple of online players that started bringing it back. Mac large package, large package is one of them, online, and it seems like it's filtered down to some local level play, which is an interesting discussion about how do you prepare for a tournament, because typically we talk about, there's the online meta, it's its own thing. If you play those players, they'll be playing something like that. And then there's like the local meta where it's like, here's all these people. They kind of play their own thing. They're not necessarily terminally online about Armada, and they have a totally different approach to the game. So to see a little bit of cross-pollination is pretty new for me. But my fleet against 2-ship says, you'll never meaningfully attack me until I want you to. I'm going to sit back. I have 2 flotillas. You can shoot me at long. I don't particularly care. And then I'll get that close range shot because you'll come to me, and then I'll jump to speed 2 and really put the hammer blow on you.
For context, real quick, Reuben, do you want to explain what your fleet does for the episode?
Kills people real dead.
Well,
go ahead, Chris.
That can lead me into a couple of questions about your fleet and some observations that I had. So I think that'll kind of help explain to newer players what your fleet is all about. And right now I've got the Starhawk called up so that people can take a look at that. And one thing that I want to throw out there is that as a newer player, I had some difficulty understanding why an engineering command might be better than a concentrate fire command. And when you look at the Starhawk, you see, 4 engineering, and then if you've got a token, you've got an additional 2. So when you balance it out, a concentrate fire is going to give you an additional die, whereas an engineering command, if you've got that token, could conceivably give you 3 shields back, which is going to outweigh that die. I mean, is that an incorrect way to look at that?
So it's all about the idea of time to kill, right? So large ships are attritional in nature. So if you engineering at the right point in an engagement, you just said, I'm one whole turn harder to kill, especially when you push shields around. So that first 6 points that you spend, suddenly those 4 shields on your side or 3 on your side, they're in the fight. So now it's a whole nother front arc attack that takes to get through. And when you're doing that kind of engagement with the Starhawk specifically, it'll just throw like a whole fleet's worth of shots if you get in its double arc and go, I've got 14 hull, I've got 6 shields on my front, 4 on my side, I can push them around. And my fleet specifically has Leia in it, so it'll always tumble the dials to be... So what Leia does is she says, when my ship activates, because she's an officer, change the dial of a friendly ship within 5 inches to match me. So what you can do is you can just set your game plan, and if you watch my games, it's the same dials. Like everybody who's played me a lot, you guys know what I do, right? It's going to be 3 to 4 navs, and then it's going to be engineering deep the rest of the game. And when something gets shot at, and I know it's like turn 2 or 3, one of those navs gets swapped to engineering, so I just keep the attrition. That's when the attrition kicks in because of the parts resupply tokens.
Yeah, so I also want to say, so confire dials scale with the ship they're assigned to. A confire dial on a small ship is valuable because you're only throwing 2 to 3 dice anyways, but a confire dial on ISD is useless compared to engineering or a nav because it doesn't have the same impact for that ship.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad
Confire-
idea to confire in a TRC 90, but it's a bad idea to confire basically on anything else.
Okay.
Especially Akbar, because that's when you throw 6 damage at the side and Nick cries.
Okay.
Right.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like with my super Chris. I never dial up confire
Yeah.
because I'm throwing 10 dice, throwing 1 extra die. You know, it's not worth it when I get 6 engineering points off that dial.
Yeah.
That's 3 shields. That's so much, and it goes back to, again, to the attrition thing.
Yeah.
And especially when you have things like ECMs and you're able to use your brace tokens. 3 shields with a guaranteed brace token is a lot of damage mitigation.
Well, that also leads me to another part of your fleet there, Reuben, which is your Admiral, Krista Agate. And while I get most of it, there's one aspect of it that kind of confuses me, and I'm hoping that you can clear this up for me and hopefully some other newer players. And that is the part where if your speed is not 0, you may discard 1 defense token to resolve the effect of that defense token. Now, can't you do that anyway?
So what that means is that if someone attacks you with an attack pool that has an accuracy in it and chooses a defense token, Agate can discard the chosen defense token to resolve the effect of the token.
That was where I was not understanding what I was reading there, and I never thought about the effect of the accuracy there.
So it's permanent insurance, and she can do it every turn.
Yeah.
And that's why she's paired with Waylix Ballistic so much, because Waylix lets you get a defense token back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is usually the right choice for the extra token that she adds?
Like 90% is going to be 2 braces.
Yeah.
If you want, like, there's certain cases where if you're playing against like a bunch of squads, or you're playing against like 2-die attack MSU, which isn't very common right now, you may take a redirect if you have expert shield techs. But like, I just play brace, really.
And the expert shield tech lets you spend a redirect to cancel a damage.
Right.
So if you're taking like an average of 2 to 3 damage, effectively another redirect with ESTs is equivalent to a brace.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk to you, Nick, about your SSD experience for Saturday and what happened for you.
Well, I had a good time until my dice didn't go my way. But yeah, I've been trying the super app and running it for a while now, and it's definitely kind of like, you know, what we saw throughout this meta is that these, you know, running something big, tanky that throws heavy punches is kind of where a lot of winning lists are ending up. We're seeing a lot of that, and so I've been bringing the biggest, baddest ship there is. Really, what happened? I ended up losing my second game to the 3 large separatist ships. No squadrons, just 3 big, punchy, tanky ships, and it was a close game. Even with all those dice, all those punches being thrown, I was managed to kill 2 of his ships, and I almost got away if it wasn't for just the lucky die roll in the end. So really feeling good about the super's position in just being a tank. I kind of do somewhat similar to Reuben, where I'll die out the navigate early on, and then it's mostly engineering because I rely on Jerry to turn. So it's just engineering the entire game. And with the super, when you reveal a dial, you always get a matching token. And so every turn, I get an engineering dial and a token. That's 6 points. That's 3 shields. Or a lot of times in the first round, I'll move 6 shields after the first couple lasers fly. I'm pushing 6 shields from my rear to my front, and then I'm just recovering shields the entire game.
Now, do the Imperials have something similar to Leia to let you manipulate your dials?
In a way.
In a way.
In the way the super works.
Yeah.
And the card he has.
What I'm doing is I'm using Commander Vanto, which allows me to get any command token I want after I take a command on my turn. And so with the super, I'm using the Ravager title, so I can get a Confire dial base. I get the dial effect with a token, and then because I'm using Jerry to navigate, I really only need to worry about speeding up or down, which I can do with a nav token. And I'm running very low squadrons, so if I need to push a squadron, I can always get a token when I need it. So I've been using Commander Vanto on my super to basically give me that flexibility that at any point in the game I can say, okay, I really need to speed up or slow down, or okay, I need to move a squadron to stop a bomber wing right now, or so it gives me that versatility on my activation. It's not quite as good, I think, as Leia. But it's definitely pretty strong.
I think the Empire has multiple tools to manipulate commands. Like Jerry,
Sure.
you get rid of nav commands, so you focus just on engineering, and then your Ravager on your SSD makes your Confire tokens Confire command dials, and then there's Ozzel as an admiral who makes your nav tokens into basically nav commands, a weakened version, and then you focus on engineering instead. So they just have different tools that just Leia.
Yep.
And it seemed like,
as I say,
it seemed like the Imperial was the way to go this past weekend. Most of the fleets that were there were running Imperials. Do you think there was any particular reason for that?
It's the same reason there's always been that way. Empire is the most popular faction. People they see the Star Destroyers, and it draws people to the game. There was like 13 or 14 of the 20, I think, were
it was a crazy ratio this time.
Yeah,
there was
we usually see a majority
and 2 rebels, I think.
Yeah.
Now the other thing that I wanted to point out was, your ship technically is your fleet is technically a 2-ship list, but when you guys are talking about 2-ship lists, you're talking about something very, very different, and I had never seen that before, so I really don't like the idea, so I'm kind of curious as to what the selling points are, pro and con, on that.
So it used to be that there were certain commanders you could take, officer slots that you could take, that would say, this ship will absolutely go last, and this card will exhaust, and I don't act, you act again. And that's where that 2-ship meta developed. Now you get pass tokens, but they're not as impactful as those previous cards were. So I think a lot of, at least my experience with the people that I played when they played 2-ship against me in this tournament, on the one hand, one of them, didn't really read the objective correctly, and then essentially just didn't play a game with me. And we'll talk about how we approach that in a tournament setting, because it's different in a casual game to how to maximize that in a tournament. And in my game 3, Nick Griffiths has played that type of list a ton. All I've seen him play is a large 1 or 2 supporting things and a whole bunch of squads. And he was playing Sloane, and he was able to maneuver his ships in a manner where, even though I out-activate him and I can always wait and watch what he does, he didn't drift into threatening positions, and that's very, very hard to do. And he's also his his style of flying, because I've flown against him twice in the last 3 tournaments, and he really likes doing a passing attack. So if you watch how his ship actually moves on the board, he does a squiggle thing to bleed speed into my I trap him in a very standard approach for how I fly my fleet. And I've thought about this opening engagement before, because I'm crazy and think about Armada too much. And then he bleeds speed, and I get him, and he's in this threatening position, and we trade our first shots at medium. He does basically nothing to me. I turn my brain off and don't get tilted about Sloane and just let him do whatever. And he doesn't do anything, because typically Sloane does that if you just turn your brain off and don't freak out. And we'll talk about that too, because that's a very specific thing. And then he goes to speed 3 and just bails, because he knew he had lost the engagement, He knew he couldn't fight me because I had moved in a manner to fight on my terms, so he just flew away. And I was able to pick up a TIE Defender off of Flak because he has to come to me. He's Sloan. He has to try and do something to try and get a win, which gave me, a few extra points. But that approach squadron alpha and then disengage after one turn, he's done that to me twice. So it seems like very much his style and approach to the game, which is, just an interesting thing when you start playing people more than once. You really start picking up on their style and tells and how they do stuff.
So what about you, Garrett? What interesting experience did you have from Saturday?
Man, so this time I brought I've been flying Luminara to Venator for a long time, and I decided to swap Luminara out and bring Anakin, the new Anakin Admiral, just to see how it would go with his rerolls. I dropped one of my Peltas and brought a Consular to do the Mercy mission, which also meant I dropped a Venator 2 to a Venator 1, so I could keep Spats and not have to bring Flag Bridge. And that fleet combination is just so much weaker than what I've been working with. Because the Venator 1 loses its thermal shields, and so I put Tranquility on it, and even in one of my games, I think the second one, somebody had a Darth Vader boarding team, and they got rid of my Tranquility, which was the only saving grace on the Venator 1. I think Anakin's ability is neat when it pays off, because you get the re-rolls on each attack by spending the defense tokens of other ships. And I did a really good job of keeping my fleet together to make sure that everyone is in position at the speed 5. But even with Spats and X-Rax and putting damage out and the re-rolls, I just couldn't chew through as fast as I could. My first game was against the same triple CIS large list that Nick's SSD played in Ram 2, and I messed that one up at the beginning. He picked my asteroid tactics, and I put my asteroids just 1 inch too far forward on the table for me, so that when he jumped his Providence and Recusence at speed 3, he landed an inch away from him, and I landed an inch away from him. So I couldn't take advantage of being able to land on the asteroids and recover my defense tokens. And so that was game over at that point, because now I've got 2 Providences and Patriot's Fist shooting me in the face. And then I thought I was going to get out of it, but his middle Providence had hardened bulkheads. And I had planned on sending my Pelta down the middle and ramming it to death, because my Pelta had a bunch of defensive tech. ECMs, an extra evade token. That thing was going nowhere with 6 engineering points each turn. And he was able to harden bulkheads, bounce off that Pelta back and forth for 3 turns, put 3 damage on me, and he took none. And that led me to have to chew through that. I killed that Providence and then killed his Patriot's Fist down to 1 hull, which left him to ram it and kill himself at the end after he blew up my last ship. But it was a bloodbath. But the Anakin rerolls on that game worked really well, as far as my Spats and the shots getting off. And then the second round, I played against I think an Imperial 2 ship. No, it was an Ozza fleet with a Raider and Architects and an ISD, and I managed to win that one. And then my last game was against a Sato, and at that point my tournament points were so low, but I played against a Sato list, and he did a really good job. He got some really good APT criticals on me. I got blinded gunners on my objective ship with advanced gunnery, so I couldn't spend any of my accuracies when I needed to. And I had rolled 3 and blocked. I thought I was gonna block all his evade tokens and his redirect, and we actually played through and blew it up. And he's like, "Oh wait, you have blinded gunners." So I was like, "Oh no, you're so right." And so he put his ship back on the board, and it got away. It's just the way it goes. But I think Anakin, if I had practiced Anakin a long time, like I'd practiced Luminara, I think he's probably got more teeth than I presented him to have. But he's really hard to use. I don't know. I think the day that we get Garkitans, Republic Architans, Anakin's going to be an absolute menace.
Yeah, it feels like Anakin's really geared towards like an MSU or like large with like many support ship style.
Yeah, and the Republic doesn't have enough smaller, cheaper ships to really propagate that ability, kind of like CR90s or an Architan. So.
Yeah.
And red dice with black dice and ordnance experts seems really effective for him.
Well, I guess I'll share what happened with me. As far as, I mean, I did not win a game, but I felt really good coming out of the event because I feel like I flew a lot better than what I had in the past. I mean, it started off, I had to go up against Damon, who I'd played in the first round of my very first tournament, and he took my lunch money that day. But I actually was really, I stood up to him pretty well, and came out with a 5-6 loss, so I didn't feel terribly bad about that. My next game, I was going up against somebody that was running a lot of torpedo frigates, and I was not prepared for the way that his admiral worked. He was using fighters to stay close to me so that he could change all his dice to black dice.
Yes.
And
that's it. Yeah. The APTs. Yeah.
And that hurt a lot. And I still managed to get out of there with a 5-6, but although part of that was just bad luck on his part, he was trying to run his flagship away from me and ended up flying off the board. So I got lucky to get the 5-6 in that one. I didn't feel good about the game. The dice hated me that game too. So it was just a lot of things, and I almost tilted that game, but I came back. I apologized for I don't think I acted horribly, but I was getting really close and I could feel it, and I felt like the need to say something on that.
Yeah.
But then the last game I was up against a Mahdi fleet. So he was running 2 ISDs that had, hull points for days, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to just smack him head on because I only had the 1 ISD. So I played pretty cagey and flew away from him, but my initial setup is what lost me the game, because trying to predict where he was going to go, I had one of my Gazantes facing the opposite direction from the rest of my fleet because it got put out first, and then as I saw how he was deploying, I had to go the other direction and did not fly the Gazanti correctly to keep it away from fire, and so he blew that out of the sky. I got one of his ISDs down to the last hull point, but the score on that game was 45-60. And that is not an Armada score.
Yeah, that's a tie.
Yeah. Yeah, so we pretty much just, stared at each other. He felt like he should have, he had the bid on me, and he felt like he should have gone second instead of first after the game. I heard him talking about that, and I don't know how well that would have affected things. But ultimately, my goal was to play keep away and try to pick at him a little bit at a time. My squads did exactly what they were supposed to do. I was able to keep him at arm's length, and so he didn't really get any big kills. And I feel good about the way that I flew on Saturday.
Yeah, that's massive improvement.
Yes, especially against Damon. Damon's a really good player.
Yeah,
Damon's
and I know
really good.
I know he was playing something very, very different from what I played the first round, the first time I played him, because he was playing that Count Dooku fleet the first time I played him, and that is just a frustrating fleet to play against because he's essentially telling you, no, you can't do what you want to do.
Right, with rates. And Jeff's MC30 Sato list is good. Like, his APTs will just, if he pulls the right card, it will just mess your day up, man.
Oh, yeah.
On your ship. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's no, planning against that.
Yeah.
Because Sato always works. Like, even if you have his squadrons engaged, he's going to get that black die.
Yeah, the only thing you can do is, tie his squadrons up away from your ships, which is... like impossible. It's like
Yeah.
you can't do that. You can't rely on that being your plan.
Right.
Well, and I didn't focus on his squads as much as I should have. I do recognize that.
Yeah.
But hindsight's 2020. So going forward, do you think there's anything that we could pull about the meta from what we saw on Saturday, or was this just a really big hodgepodge based on players coming from different regions?
I think it's players understand that to win games, you have to conserve points and kill points, right? So we have to have powerful ships that are hard to kill, that are maneuverable, to get pretty consistent 7s and 8s. Imperials do that very, very well. So a lot of people will just play the safe bet and bring Imperials to an event. And I think we saw that this weekend.
Yeah, you could clearly tell, like all the top, especially like the final round of the tournament, all the top tables were like large, and support ship, large support ship, large ship and squadrons, and then all the bottom tables were small. There really was like all the large, big, heavy lists rose to the top, while the MSU lists, fell to the bottom.
I do want to say that at a local tournament, usually your bottom half players are new players too, which is what we
That's
saw.
also true. Yeah.
So because at the top, like Evan, he flies his MSU Architects list, and he's very good with that.
It's
true.
Right, he's a
for
menace.
years.
He's been playing that for a long time. Yep.
And then I also wanted to point out that Sloan is still an absolute menace until it hits a hard counter. Luminara is the hardest counter, but Reuben's fleet is a absolute stopgap to a Sloan.
Sure.
Because he's got quad laser turrets, he's got expert shield techs, and he's just not afraid to lose.
The overlapping flak. Yeah.
Right. Because if you have a Sloan list, you're typically not geared to shoot hard to kill a ship. And even if you Sloan like half of Reuben's tokens away, his Starhawk is still going to punch you in the face when you're like squadron pushing kitted ships get close to him.
So Sloan runs specifically blue dye bombers, typically is how it works out. You'll see some black dye bombers every once in a while. And in my game 3 versus Nick Griffith, and I've done this to you too, Chris, where I just kind of shut my brain off and just let you bomb me and go PDICs. All right, cool. Quad laser turret, torn far reroll. Well, you did 1 damage to me, and I'll just take it on my shields because you're trying to fish for an accuracy, and it's only 2 out of 8. So if you attack me with 8 squadrons, technically you should only, on average, strip 1 of my tokens. I have Whalix, and a lot of times you won't. So as long as you don't like spend anything until you have to, you'll generally turn out okay. And the interesting thing about this fleet that I flew is that when you do that to me as Sloan, your generic squadrons are absolutely at risk, and it's really scary because a 6 health squadron with no defense tokens that takes pretty consistently 1 damage off of a blue die rerolling from me. I have LTTs and blue-black flag. I might just blow it out of the sky. So the Sloan player has to really, really consider what they commit and how they move. And I think Nick played it very well. Like when he attacked me, he took a bunch of flak and then he attacked and moved away. That was a really good cunning play. And it came down to, another good point is how Morna was positioned and played. It came down to me not getting her off of 3 crits in a row off of a blue die, which is pretty low odds to happen. It wouldn't have taken me to the 8, I don't think, but it would have been 23 extra points. But the fleet itself, in the past, I've been very concerned against playing squadless because of how really oppressive German Sloan is specifically as a matchup. And this fleet, I think, might just rock it. I don't know. We'll have to play it some testing because it's totally designed to say, oh, you're going to hit me with 2 damage? Cool. I'll take it. It'll be fine. Right. And then I'm going to flak you a whole bunch.
I would be curious to see your list against something like either Ryan's Super or my Super. because Orion was bringing, he was rocking Boarding Troopers on a super, and I think that's something that would give you a lot of trouble because you fly in, because the super has Squadron 5, so you fly in Boarding Troopers, exhaust 5 tokens, and then throw 10 dice at you, and then say, "What do you want to do about it?"
No, wait. Boarding Troopers, isn't that dependent upon the orders that you have and not the squads?
It is the squadron value.
Oh, okay.
You choose a number of defense tokens equal to the squadron value of your ship, and then you exhaust that many tokens. And all you need is a squad token to trigger it. So you bank a token early on. Like I say, for example, I use Commander Vanto. Turn 1, just get a token. And then on turn 2, because the super's so huge, on turn 2 we're already in close. I go, okay, Boarding Troopers, exhaust all your defense tokens in your Starhawk, and then throw 10 dice at you. And then, you can take it, or you can burn your tokens, and then from there on it's just a slugfest.
Now, while I wasn't running Sloan when I flew against you, Nick, I did notice that you have a lot to counteract fighters, and is that something counteract squads? Is that something that is effective against Sloan builds as well?
It can be. Sloan's a pretty good counter to the super because the super cannot take ECMs. It cannot, so like, it's once you start stripping defense tokens off the super, they go down. They're not invincible. And I think newer players get really intimidated by this huge ship on the table, so you get a lot of really half committed attacks. When you go and that's the thing. Like I've got my super blown up a few times where it's like when you go all in on it, the overload pulse boarding trooper combination. Which just burns all your braces, and I run local fire control, so they go no salvo, no braces, it's all gone. Boarding trooper or overload pulse you, and then boarding trooper your tokens out the window, and now all of a sudden that 22 hull ship just has to take 22 damage. I can't stop you, I can't prevent it, and when you're throwing 8 dice pools, you're talking even about squadrons. When squadrons go in and bomb, which when Garrett was running that, just.
Oh yeah, the arcs.
Republic, the Arc 170s, and just would throw 5 Arc 170s in the side of it, and they're speed 2, but so what? I can't go faster than that either. And so they just sit in the rear of it and just bomb for days, and you'll bring it down. And that's why I switched to what I'm doing now with quad laser turrets, and I'm using flat guns, and I'm running low squadrons, but they're there to protect my super. They're there to buy a turn for the super. Because squadrons are such a good counter to the defense tokens that the super has.
Now, I get the feeling that just looking at the way things went, there is not a dominant build right now, and I'm just kind of curious if you guys agree with that statement.
Oh yeah, I mean anything can win, right?
Yeah.
In the right hands. I mean the player skill has so much to do with it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Deployment. So
that and then consistent play, because now I've hit about 15 games with my fleet, and that's when for me it really starts getting oppressive for everybody else in my consistent play group, because I really start all the ideas all locked together, and all right, I've got all the game plan down, and you can watch me play, and it's all muscle memory, 99% the same stuff, and it starts rolling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it goes back to kind of like what Reuben was saying earlier, was conserving points, especially in a tournament, giving up points, needlessly, losing a squadron, even just a TIE fighter, giving up a squadron for nothing is a misplay. That's something you should try to avoid. And as you get better at the game, and you think that when you really play with that in mind, that you think okay, that's the example Reuben was talking about his game with Nick Griffiths. Nick is such a good conservative player. He gets his squadrons out of there. He gets his ships out of there. As soon as he makes a decision I can't kill that, speed 3 and gone. There's no wishy-washy I'm gonna just try to hit it again, or no, we're gonna kind of commit a little bit, or players will put their squadrons in front of a ship and just bomb until they're dead. And you're you just gave up 45 points, and you did some hull damage, but the ship still, it's limping, but it's getting away. And so you lost everything for nothing. And so recognizing that is a big part of the game. And there's no dominant style, but I would say that competitive play kind of requires that experience.
It kind of leads to a thought in my head here anyway, that there are really only two ways to play. You either play defensively or you play offensively, and you can't do a half measure and expect to walk away with the kind of results that you want. Because if you don't play full defensive, then you're going to give away points. If you don't play full of offensive, then you're not going to score enough points.
Yeah.
I mean, you do need to know when to disengage, of course, but
I would say if you're going to play defensive, right, it's a farming fleet. Because defensive and then not doing anything you're not doing anything.
Right.
So you got to have an objective around it. But yeah, if you're going to play offensively, you got to make sure you have the tools to kill fighters or the ships. Like you need one or the other. Because you got to get points somewhere.
Yep.
And my fleet, farming as a defensive play style, it's all about forcing that engagement. Because I'm sitting here forcing you to come into me, and specifically this fleet will go, okay, you're into me? Die, please. And now I get a 10, or now I get a 9. Because my game that wasn't on stream, I played against three Architans, Flotilla, 4 TIE Fighters, and Demolisher. And my opponent kind of did a half crescent from the corner of the board into the middle, and I deployed to my left corner and did my typical wheel. I had the 2 rocks below me, and I had the 1 rock above me. So when you watch my game 2 and 3, me measuring everything out, I thought about that a week in advance and did some pre-measuring, and it worked out pretty well for to wheel everything and keep everything on target to get the rocks. And eventually what happened is that she stayed at speed 1 and 2 and made a triangle with Ramadi to try and get obstruction and shoot at me. But I was able to slowly approach her to not take a meaningful shot. And as her parabola went this way and mine went this way, we met, and I was able to destroy 2 of the Architans, which plus the points I got me to the 10. And in that first round, when you're playing against you're playing against an unknown quantity, I think that's where farming, really good drilled play and a defensive farming fleet really capitalize on other people. Because if they don't really know what's going on, oh man, it's haymakers, and they just go down really fast. Because I've played previous Armada tournaments where I played against a new player, and they deployed at speed 2, went down to speed 1, and cautiously approached the engagement, and I lost. I couldn't get to them fast enough playing the Akbar fleet I was playing to get enough points to get the meaningful win. Because when you're playing an event like this, you gotta shoot for 30. That's the only way to guarantee it, So
yeah,
you gotta get every point. And a farming fleet like this that can actually just really, really punch you too, it's so good at capitalizing on those half commitments, or oh, I've never played against this before, or oh man, that's a Starhawk, that's really big and scary, and there's a Providence, oh, I don't know how to approach fighting this. So
I will say the first player you played, given enough time and practice with those Architans, she can layer 3 in a row long shots at you, and then eventually get to the point where she'll time that gladiator jump to do it.
Oh yeah.
But an MSU fleet like that takes, I'll say, a year of practice to master.
Oh, it takes at least 2.
But it could absolutely decimate your Starhawk if played right. Right?
Yeah, that kind of
long
engagement,
range is their wheelhouse.
I go to speed 1 and I just sit there and say, all right, well, you're going to float away from me. I'm going to stay by these rocks. Thank you. And I'll take whatever 7 I get out of it.
Right.
Yeah. And that works for you as well, because you're more than likely going to get the bid with the number of points that you're playing.
Mm-hmm. And that's the critical thing. And now for my next level. So I approach the idea of playing Armada and playing in tournaments and self-improvement as looking for the boss battle, right? So when you play Dark Souls, any video game, you have that really challenging engagement, that big fight, and when you get through that fight, you level up your gameplay. And I feel like that happened in my game against Nick Griffith because I played him before. He's gotten me before. He's another good player in our state, and to get the win, for me, that's like, oh yes, that's like another level up that's happened in my game and my skill. So now I need to figure out how do I play this fleet as first player, and if you pick my advanced gunnery, and that's going to take another like sitting down and mapping out all the deployment. I've got an idea of how to, but I don't know if it's really going to work out quite yet.
I'm going to kind of flip this a little bit and take a look at maybe some of the games that you either witnessed or played against some less experienced players, and some pitfalls that you really thought they should have been aware of during those games.
Well, do you want me to start? Or
yeah, you can go ahead and start. I didn't really
Sure.
I didn't really holler at anybody in particular. I was just throwing it
That's
out there.
Because I can keep talking Armada forever, basically. So
Well,
Let's let Garrett
I
start.
I played only one new player. Because Jeff, the MC30 APT guy, he's been playing for years. And then I played against Craig, who had the three
The
CI's largest. He knows what he's doing. And then I think Aiden, I don't want to call him a new player. I would call him a what's it called?
Like
He's
returning?
pretty new, I guess. I don't know. Like he's been playing in tournaments.
He's an intermediate player.
Yeah, so he's
Mid-level.
not. I didn't play it against anybody who's like unaware of the game, and he did a great job too. And I'm trying to think back to the game. He did a really good job of forcing me into the position where he could get his boarding Vader off the turn before, well, the same turn, but like the activation before I got my boarding troopers off. So it was like a boarding trooper off competition in the middle of the board. And I think he picked Tranquility off my ship, but I think he definitely should have took Spats off of. Wait, what did he take? Tranquility. Yeah, he should have took my Spats off my ship. Which leaving the Spats allowed me to use it to absolutely just put a huge haymaker and essentially put his ISD down to one whole point. And if he had taken away my Spats, he would have absolutely decimated me in that game. Because he would have been able to survive and then wheel his ISD and destroy my two remaining ships. So that's the only thing I can think of in that game. So they were all good players.
Did you see anything, Nick?
Yeah. So and I don't really know his experience. I played against Chris in the final round, and he's got we talked for a bit. So he's not like a brand new player, but he was playing a brand new list, and so he was running a double Simoon with gunnery teams, and then he had like a Gazanti and a few TIE defenders, but the issue was he was trying to run advanced gunnery as an objective. And so if you're not aware of this, especially for new players, when you're list building, you see advanced gunnery, it lets you shoot twice at a ship, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. And you have gunnery teams that let you shoot twice at a ship, and you're like, oh, that's so cool.
I know what you're going at.
But gunnery teams has this line at the bottom of the card that says you cannot target the same ship more than once and activate. I don't remember exact wording on it, but you can't make the gunnery team specifically disallows you from making a second attack against the same ship.
Yeah, you can't double tap.
And so I told him, I was like, okay, so look, you have gunnery teams on both of your ISDs, and you have this advanced gunnery objective that I know you really want to play, but what will happen is I'll choose your advanced gunnery, and my super's going to get to shoot twice, and you can't. Because advanced gunnery will let you shoot twice against the same ship, but gunnery teams will override that. The upgrade card always is like the final say on the rules. And so if you're out there building a list, watching this right now, here's your warning. Do not take gunnery teams if you want to play advanced gunnery as an objective, because it will not work for you. And then your opponent will, even though first player, I would have to choose two different targets, but that was fine because he had two ships to shoot. you have to be careful with like how your upgrade cards will work with your objectives, and that goes back to again this idea of list building. And he even admitted it. He was like, "Oh well, I haven't really practiced with this fleet that much," so he just didn't really sit down and look at all the text, and that's fine. That happens. But that's the biggest thing is when you're building a list, especially for a tournament, is you want to look at everything together. And like if you have an upgrade that doesn't fit with the rest of your fleet, then save those points, put something else in. If you have an objective that you really want to build around, then make sure your upgrades help you with that objective. You don't need to have things that are kind of running counter to each other. I don't remember if he had like a bid if he really wanted to go second. I think he saw my super and said, "Well, I want to go second," because he didn't want to play my objectives, which is fair. But stuff like that, where what happened was his Simoons rolled in, and unfortunately, your gunnery teams and Simoon, double Simoon with gunnery teams, I think is a pretty good scary combination. He had like Spinals and LTTs on them. They were really punchy ships, but the problem with that is that gunnery teams is he wanted to dial up confires and just shoot twice, right? Gunnery teams like shoot 7 red dice at this ship and then 7 red dice at that ship, and then his next Simoon 7 red dice at that ship, 7 red dice at that ship, and like really wear down 2 ships at the same time, and that's a really good combination. However, I had 1 ship to shoot, so he was confiring and shooting me with 1 attack and then with 1 attack, and then when I punched back, it was just so much harder. And so that happened in my last game. He just couldn't. There wasn't anything he could really do about it, and that just comes down to a matchup issue at that point. The Simoon is a great ISD. They're meant to stay at long range. You don't want to get too close with them, and unfortunately, with the super as long as it is, I just went speed 2 on turn 1, turned into him, and you can't. Like there was nothing he could do. I was already at medium range basically, and then it was just boom, boom. So that's just the biggest thing is for new players is that you can really see where it's like there's players who drill a list over and over and over again, and you fine tune your objective suite. Every upgrade, every squadron is like I've weighed every point that I put into this list, and that takes experience and it takes a lot of games to get to that point.
Yeah, I know in my second round I made a mistake in not my deployment, but actually setting up the obstacles. I had actually set things up to make it way, way too easy for my opponent to take some points from me with objectives, because he just had to land on the rock and get it, and he's running A-wing, so he's getting across the board as quick as he wants. And, if you grab a 15-point objective with an A-wing, guess what? You've made up your points right there. So you got to be careful, and you got to know what your objectives do, and that's part of my inexperience. So, did you see anything, Reuben?
I mean, I've got to say, read the objectives, right?
Yeah.
Because of my game too. But I think we can take it a step further and talk about in that 15-minute, in the break between games, sit down, drink the water, take a deep breath before you play that next game, right? Just close your eyes, take a long deep breath, read the objectives, right? Because you've got to regather that focus before each game, because you move everything around, you meet a new person, you talk a whole bunch of smack, you laugh a bunch, you say hi, you meet each other, you look at the people around you, you check what the score is, and your brain just kind of gets like scattered to the winds. So you got to take that time to like center your focus back on the game that you're playing so that you can make that good decision, because that objective choice decision really determines a lot of outcome of games.
I got to be honest, after that second game, I really, that one was the one that I felt bad about, and I actually asked my opponent after the game to give me what he saw that I did wrong, and he gave me some good information outside of just that big mistake with the placement on the objectives. But anyway, we are getting close to the end of the night, so I want to thank you guys for being on the show. I actually ended up getting some good news. My travel plans for this week have changed a little bit, so I will be around for Thursday Night Armada. I will actually have a show, so I'm going to be running the same list and trying to get better at it. Although I am making one change. One thing that I did learn is that Squall is not what I need on that fleet, because I keep on forgetting to use it. And if you forget to use it, then it's not worth the points. So
Exactly.
The other title, what was the other title, Nick?
Pursuant.
Pursuant,
Yep.
yeah. We're going to be going with that now and seeing how that works for me. But again, I want to thank you guys and say congratulations again to you, Reuben.
Big congrats.
you.
Oh, yeah. Hold it. Don't forget, Sunday, the 28th, we have our Armada tournament at Chaos.
Chaotic Good.
Chaotic Good.
Yeah, Chaotic Games Coffee. So I'm trying to, let me see how many slots are left open here.
And I will be streaming that event, so you guys will get to see games coming live from it.
So Ruben will TO for us, dedicated, which will be really nice. That way we don't have to
Dedicated
mess around playing and trying to judge. So we've
And
got
if you get the buy, you're not getting the buzzsaw.
Yeah. So you got 4 slices, or we got 4 spaces left. Once I hit 20, I got to cut it off because we're out of space at that point. It'll be $10, which is a really good bargain considering that it's a 4-round tournament. It's all day.
Yep.
Food on site. They got a coffee shop, sandwiches, pastries, and stuff around there. We'll have like a 30-minute lunch break, longer if you play faster. And we'll have a store champ kit that I have in my hands, actually, so you'll get like the actual cards. No shade, Ryan, if you're listening. And then tater
We're gonna
fries
need
on top of
somebody
that.
with better handwriting than me to write that.
And one sly wizard says hello to everyone.
Well, hello there.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
So again, I've got a few notes that I want to touch base with the viewers on, but I thank you guys for being on the show, and we
Can I
will
say something real quick?
Yeah.
He said hello there.
He said hello, everyone.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I thought you said hello there, and I was like, none of us did it. Really?
Yeah, I would have caught it. Right?
Well, good night, everybody.
Yeah. Good night. Good to see you,
All right,
Chris.
see you guys.
So, thank you for watching the show tonight. I wanted to say, if you can, like, subscribe, do all the wonderful things on YouTube and on Twitch, and help support the channel. We are going to be doing Tuesday Night X-Wing tomorrow night, 6:30. So if you want to catch that live, I am going to be running what I call the jankiest list that I've ever run, because I currently have a friend painting all of my bombers, which means that I will not be running Imperial bombers tomorrow. I will be running my Imperial list on Thursday, and I think I'm going to actually get on the stream this time and see how well I fly this time. I felt really, really good after the event, so hopefully that will work out well. Then, as Garrett mentioned, on the 28th, we are going to have our event going on at Chaotic Good. It is a store championship. I will be streaming all 4 rounds of the event. I will also post the replays up on YouTube, so check that out if you enjoy that kind of thing. I actually have a new setup, so we're going to have a different kind of dice cam where it's going to be more like X-Wing, where you're going to see the dice overlaid. I finally got the new dice tray in to allow me to do that, so I'll be experimenting with that on Thursday. On top of that, there is also an X-Wing tournament this coming Saturday at Chaotic Good. I will not be available to stream that, unfortunately, but on Monday I'm going to have some of the X-Wing crew on to talk about what happens there. So look forward to talking about that with the crew. Look forward to you guys liking, subscribing. Join the Facebook page. Share with any questions you might have and any comments or suggestions on how to make the show better. With that, I am going to say good night, and I will see you next week.